Welcome back. We are in 1 Nephi chapter 18, starting in verse 16. So this is chapter 18, part 2. I just wanted to start off by reminding you that we are still on the boat, and there's this terrible tension, and Nephi has just been untied, and he is looking at the state of his ankles and his wrists. Nevertheless, I did look unto my God, and I did praise him all the day long, and I did not murmur against the Lord because of mine afflictions. And it seems in a way that he's pointing out the obvious. Why would you murmur? It's not God who tied you up, But it is the human tendency. When someone does something against us, we tend to complain against God and to murmur against God for the things that people do because they have agency. And it's just, it's part of mortality, sadly, is dealing with other people's agency. And, like my sister said, again, I would be perfect if it weren't for people. And that people are our greatest challenge. They are what make the law so difficult. And however, somehow we need to exonerate God for people's bad choices. And, that's one of the things that prevents a lot of people from having a relationship with God, because they think God is responsible for every bad choice any person has ever made throughout history. And especially when that was on a grand scale. And for someone that has a relationship with God, they can't see the connection there. Wait, how is it that the people that don't talk to God are doing stupid things, and then that's God's fault because they're not having a relationship with him? And so therefore, what I mean? For someone that's has a relationship with God, this is very confusing. How God is responsible for evil in the world. When to a prophet or to someone who has a strong relationship with God, they're like, wait a minute. If you had a relationship with God, all of these things could have been avoided. If everyone had that relationship, these great evils in humanity could be avoided. And yet here we are, murmuring against God because the state that the world is in right now, when it has all to do with the decisions that people made because they have agency. And whether to do things or to let things be done in their name or on their behalf because they're not interested in speaking out against things or doing anything against the current trend or the current direction that the world is going in. Too many good distractions, I guess. Now, my father Lehi had said many things unto them. Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine this poor man. And also unto the sons of Ishmael, but behold, they did breathe out much threatenings against anyone that should speak for me. And my parents, being stricken in years, so they're getting on in years, but she can't be that old because she has children that are, less than 8. So I'm just imagining, how old could she be, Nevertheless, they were traveling, and the stress of leaving the home and moving and the tension in the camp. Man, stricken in years might just mean old before their time. The years have stricken them. They have not been good to them body-wise, that because they are getting worn down and having suffered much grief because of their children. They were brought down, yea, even upon their sick beds. So again, the Book of Mormon points out this mind-body connection, that our emotions and our state of mind can have a big effect on the wellness of our body. And these two parents, both of them were so grieved over the tension and the ugliness that was going on in their family. And they were basically good people, you know, and yet this was happening, and it was just more than they could bear. And it's interesting because people think that, you know, if they're doing the best they can to keep the commandments, you know, like Nephi and Lehi, probably Sariah, probably most of the people in that camp, well, Sam, and maybe not most of the people in the camp. But there were a lot of people in the camp that were trying to do what was right all the time. And nevertheless, these circumstances are so difficult. And no matter how well you do in life, that doesn't guarantee that things are going to be perfect, and that your family's going to be perfect, and that there's not going to be tension. Now, if you have means as a family, and you have more power to manipulate your family, the old, you know, do what I say or you're cut out of the will, and because the will's so darn big, these people are willing to be obedient for the payout. Okay, that's a little different, because you're controlling through greed and through other things, somebody else's insecurity to make it on their own or whatever else. But for people who don't have that, you know, lucky pot of gold that they can lure their children with, why, there's a lot of bearing of feelings and how people really feel, because they don't really have something big that they're getting to inherit. So it just seems like there's more a willingness to let people know how you feel, and there's a certain amount of tension. And these parents, even though they probably did the best they could, and they had an incredible relationship with God, nevertheless, their children disagreed. And Adam and Eve, their child disagreed with them. They disagreed. In other situations in the scriptures, Alma and Alma the younger, they disagreed for a time. That changed, but just because you're righteous doesn't mean that you're given, you know, star children. Now, when I say star children, I mean that, you know, that little golden stars that people put on their chart, you know, that kind of child that just makes the parent look amazing, you know. Those are the star children. I'm not talking about the New Age thing. I'm talking about those dumb little charts in school, you know. Oh, you get a star because you did this. You did a star because you did this. Oh, and you get nothing, you know, Jim Bob, because you didn't do anything good. You know, that whole manipulative system of rewarding people. But too often people, especially religious people, think that if they're living the gospel, that they should never have any discord in their family, and that there should never be any emotions aired ever. And, you know, they aired a lot of them, and it didn't seem to benefit them all that much. But they were on their sick beds because of their grief and much sorrow and the iniquity of my brethren. Oh, no, I love it. Nephi's like, I had nothing to do with the stress, Mom and Dad. It was all Laman and Lemuel, you know. And it's just, because of their grief and much sorrow and the iniquity of my brethren, they were brought near even to be carried out of this time to meet their God. Yea, their gray hairs were about to be brought down to lie low in the dust. Yea, even they were near to be cast with sorrow into a watery grave. That's the language here is probably the most beautiful in all of the whole Book of Mormon, this whole verse 18, because it's written with such tenderness. He's almost cradling them with his words. It just has such a beautiful rhythm, and the image is just so sad and tender at the same time. Every time I come across this verse when I read the Book of Mormon, I have to read it again, because it's like a little sad song in the middle of this chapter. Because of their grief and much sorrow and the iniquity of my brethren, they were brought near even to be carried out of this time to meet their God. Yea, their gray hairs were about to be brought down to lie low in the dust. Yea, even they were near to be cast with sorrow into a watery grave. That's such a beautiful verse. And it is sad, with Lehi and Sariah, they were, as he said, stricken in years. So they don't bounce back as well as the youth. But the youth on the ship, the children on the ship, were no less traumatized. The thing with children is they just get over things much quicker, Here, have some honey, It's like... Children are so easily distracted from their pain. They don't want to feel bad. And as adults, we kind of get in that habit of nursing our pain. And it helps, it prevents us from bouncing back as quickly. If you can see children, their house just burned down and lost their whole family, but the fireman gives them a lollipop, for a few minutes, and that's the beauty of children, just so trusting in the next moment, always in the next moment. What will the next moment bring? And just that childlike trust that it's going to be okay. And going from moment to moment to moment like that, it's not until we get older when we lose our hope and our faith that the years begin to strike us. And that buoyancy and that joy can disappear real quickly if we don't work on finding a way to not be grieved for the decisions of others. Because ultimately we can love and we can, do our best as parents, friends, spouses, or whatever. But ultimately people make their own choices. And the more we let that tear us up, the less we'll be able to minister to them and the consequences of those bad choices. So, like the Lord told Jeremiah, don't be dismayed at their faces. Don't be dismayed. Just think positively. Always have faith in the human spirit, that no matter how stupid a turn that they may have made in your opinion, who knows what they'll learn there. And just exercise faith not only in God, but in your fellow man. Whether that fellow man be your child or anybody else in your life. And Jacob and Joseph also, remember they were less than 8, being young, having need of much nourishment, were grieved. Here these little children, again, they're just as grieved. Were grieved because the afflictions of their mother, even if they didn't understand what was going on, they saw the pain and the suffering of their mother. And when you're a child, that is instantly transferred to your heart. The pain and suffering of your mother. For most people, there's always exceptions, but most people, when they see their mother suffer, it is just as bad, if not worse in some cases, for children, that, their source of life is being abused by life. It is an overwhelming experience for children to see their mother suffer. And very often that trauma gets kept and stored in our bodies like muscle memory. That grief, unless we come to understand it, but as children, they just want to file it away and feel better. But to see your mother suffer is truly one of the hardest things ever. And also my wife and her tears and prayers, and also my children, did not soften the hearts of my brethren that they would loose me. Yeah, they're beyond heart softening, I'll tell you that. And there was nothing save it were the power of God which threatened them with destruction. As I shared the last time about Shiva, there is nothing to do here except for get Shiva over here and started dancing, because that little idiot that says nothing matters, or that there is no right or wrong, or just idiocy in general, can only respond to that dance of destruction. But he says here, nothing, and there was nothing save it were the power of God which threatened them with destruction, could soften their hearts. There was no, when you're threatened with destruction, your heart is not getting softened, you know. It's not like, you know, if somebody were to hold a gun to your head and say, give me your purse, and you go, my heart has just been softened, and out of the goodness of my heart, I'm just going to hand you my purse. That is not what happens. Your heart does not get softened. It gets frightened. And if you value your life enough, why then you'll stop doing whatever it is that you're doing that's bringing on this destruction, or you'll never fear at all, and you'll just go on until you meet that destruction. But there is no heart softening. Not even if you're the softest heart of them all, you know. If you are your life is being threatened if you don't do something, and ultimately your fear of death wins and you comply, there is fear and love can't occupy the same space. And a soft heart is, maybe he means just a changed mind in this case. Okay, a changed mind, but not a soft heart. This was just, or else. Wherefore, when they saw that they were about to be swallowed up in the depths of the sea, they repented of the thing which they had done, insomuch that they loosed me. Repented again. This doesn't mean they're changing their lives. They're just untying Nephi. That's all this is. And it came to pass after they had loosed me. And it's just interesting in the evolution of these family blowouts is that Nephi, 4 days he's tied up, and the Lord doesn't let him go until his brothers let him go. And it's just, and you wonder, like, and it's almost counterintuitive. Like, you'd think God would send the angel then, you know, but it's almost in reverse. Like, at the beginning, Laman and Lemuel, they see an angel when they start to beat Nephi and Sam with the rod, or they each have their own or whatever, you know. And then there's the shock thing, you know, and they want to throw him in the depths of the sea. And then now at this point, the Lord's just letting him be tied up, and there's no miraculous intervention. It would seem when it's the most dire, because the whole ship is involved. And it's almost like the Lord is taking Laman and Lemuel, like, just trying to give them, like, a chance to see, really see, and to understand. And it just, it's not until they're sure they're going to die that they stop. But it's just interesting, the evolution of God's intervention, that it's kind of intense at the beginning, and then it kind of tapers off. It kind of tapers off. Which, you know what, actually, that is very, you know, it actually makes a lot of sense, because if you start out big and they still aren't sold, where do you go from there? You know? So it's where do you go from there? And it came to pass, after they had loosed me, behold, I took the compass, and it did work whither I desired it. And it came to pass that I prayed unto the Lord. And after I had prayed, the winds did cease, and the storm did cease, and there was a great calm. I bet you could hear a pin drop on that ship that was barely moving on that glassy sea. You know, the feeling on that ship right now, everyone is ashamed. Everyone, from the oldest to the youngest, because this ugliness reared its head in their family. And the little ones are ashamed to see their fathers, you know, the sons of Ishmael and Laman and Lemuel, they're ashamed to see their fathers act this way. Because most of them were young enough where they didn't, you know, they weren't sold on that division yet. That comes later on. But their hearts were probably still like, violence is bad, contention is bad, yelling is bad, that childlike heart that says, I don't care who's right or wrong, all this noise is wrong. You know, so they're still there, they're still tender, and they're suffering. And I'm sure a few of them were whimpering in the silence, you know. But everyone involved is just feeling so much shame and pain and sorrow because of the hurt that was inflicted on every single person on that ship. And, you know, these moments like this do help define the coming generations. Because each person is going to tell their version of what happened to their kids. You know, and each person hands down those wounds and that hurt and that anger. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, did guide the ship, that we sailed again towards the promised land. And it came to pass that after we had sailed for the space of many days, we did arrive at the promised land. And we went forth upon the land and did pitch our tents, and we did call it the promised land. We're here. What do you think we should call it? I don't know. What do you think we should call it? The promised land sounds good to me. I don't know why that part always makes me laugh. Oh, I know why. It's because it's something from Blazing Saddles. Yeah, my name is Jim, but most people call me Jim, you know. So this is like that moment in the Book of Mormon for me. And it came to pass that we did begin to till the earth, and we began to plant seeds. Yea, and we did put all our seeds into the earth, which we had brought from the land of Jerusalem. And it came to pass that they did grow exceedingly, wherefore we were blessed in abundance. So I'm sure this mostly unused soil, if this is Mesoamerica, as many people guess it is, the rain is abundant. I'm sure it was like miracle grow, for them. And it came to pass that we did find upon the land of promise, as we journeyed in the wilderness, that there were beasts in the forests of every kind, both the cow and the ox and the ass and the horse and the goat and the wild goat and all manner of wild animals, which were for the use of men. So that's what they were looking out for, animals which were for the use of men. And that was their eye. Okay, just keep that in mind. We're going to go back. Don't worry, we're not going to skip the animals. Okay, and we did find all manner of ore, both of gold and of silver and of copper. And I say that because so many people had meltdowns over this verse. Because he says, he got off the ship, hey, look, that looks like a cow. Yeah, that's probably a cow. Maybe that's what cows look like in the promised land, And the ox, ox is any animal, four-legged animal that looks like a beast of burden. It's not anything in particular. But the cow, people have a big problem with because, they're saying, oh, the Spanish were the only ones that brought the cows over, And, and I say it like that because things are always changing. New discoveries are always canceling out old discoveries. The thing that just gets me about that whole thing is so they happen to find dinosaur bones right there, And so they take those little set of bones out and then they say, these are the last dinosaur bones and they go back such and such years. And you're like, okay, well, what about all the other bones you haven't found? This one bone that you found is going to set the date for all the others that you have not found? That has never made any sense to me. That has never made sense to me. That we base all our knowledge on what has been found. We limit it to that. And I think, you know how much has not been found? It just blows my mind that that's the way the scientific world works. That if they can't see it or find it or reproduce it in a lab, it doesn't exist for anyone. There's nothing outside of what they've been able to find, and these are the same guys when you tell them, can you go get the ketchup, please? And they go and they're like, we don't have any, and they can't find the ketchup, and then you just slide the milk slightly to the right, take the ketchup out, no offense, but it just blows my mind that that's how the scientific world works. Only unless we found it, and then when they find something else and they got to update and they got to update and they got to update as they find more and more and more. But so people had a problem with the cow, but so I decided to, hey, what could he have mistaken a cow for? Because our good old friend Columbus, when he was sailing somewhere, Dominican Republic, somewhere around that area, he saw 3 manatees and he thought they were mermaids. Okay? He described them as being not half as beautiful as they were painted. I'm sorry. But what was that guy smoking? Not even close, okay? Not even close. And I have a picture that I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to share of a manatee versus mermaid. Have you confused the two? I don't know. I just think that, the fin, the little end on the manatee is similar to what you see on mermaids. So he's like, well, maybe that's what they're talking about. And they exaggerated their looks. But yeah, it's just hilarious. So that one of the animals is called the red brocket deer. And it's actually found from Mexico to Argentina. And I'm going to put a picture up of it. But it looks like, it has similar color of a cow. He has little horns on his head. It's 4-legged. It looks like it would be delicious on a grill, and I'm sure that was a lot of what they were looking for is, can this be a beast of burden? This looks like similar to our beast of burden. I don't know if he can say, oh, well, he arrives on the Mesoamerican shore and he's all like, oh, why, that is a red brocket deer that roams from Mexico to the north of Argentina. It's like he does not have that in his vocabulary. He sees brown animal with a hide and 4 legs, and that's, in my opinion, that makes sense to me. Now, the other thing, and the ass. That's the other thing that people say. There were no asses there. But again, he sees something with 4 legs that resembles, maybe a tapir or tapir, however you pronounce it. I never knew how to pronounce that one. And he's making all these assumptions. Well, that's kind of like an ass. It's gray, or whatever. And who knows? They don't know the word for tapir or for that red brocket deer. They don't have, or llamas or alpacas, they don't have those words. So they got to come up with other things. However, this says, then people say, okay, well, they knew the horse for sure because they had horses. So there's no way that he could have not known what a horse is. And really an ass, you got to be honest, because he saw asses. The point is that those two animals are, the horse is bigger than the ass, but they look in many ways similar. And there were breeds native to America that could be mistaken probably for an ass because it's smaller than the horse that he was familiar with. But the interesting thing about this horse was that I read an article by this woman that runs a sanctuary. Oh, actually, it's not just one woman. It's many native people that run a sanctuary for native horses. And they have said the horse never disappeared, that it was just another one of the white man's lies saying that they went extinct. And they have many of the horses that they said went extinct on this sanctuary for these horses. Simply that, and I apologize, I will press pause right now because I cannot find that article. Okay, found it. And it's called The Shared History of Wild Horses and Indigenous People. And I will try to put a picture up there so you could read it. It's really interesting. The horses, I'm going to just straight read it to you, some of it, not all of it. It's kind of like the horses at the Sacred Way Sanctuary in Florence, Alabama are among the last of their kind. Some have dark stripes like arrows tracing the spine or climbing up the forelegs. Some have curly poodle-like coats or manes that cascade to the ground. According to the history books, these horses don't exist. In the official narrative, America's original horses went extinct, quote unquote, thousands of years ago, killed off by the frigid temperatures of the last ice age. Horses that live in the Americas today, claim historians, because historians would know, right? Are descendants of those first brought by European explorers and settlers in the early 16th century. And that is standard. You type this in and say horses, and they'll say, yeah, horses are a native species, but they went extinct, and then the Europeans brought them back. That's, you Mythbusters said it. Everybody says that. But according to Indigenous oral histories and spiritual beliefs from Saskatchewan to Oklahoma, America's native horses never went extinct. You know, why believe the Indian? You know, why believe the native? You know, what they say doesn't matter. Why would that? You know, these are European conquerors. They'll totally disregard anything that the people they're conquering have to say. They survived the Ice Age and lived among native people before and after the arrival of European colonizers, and a mountain of historical and archaeological evidence proves it. From ancient clay and wood horse figurines from North America and horse petroglyphs in Peru to accounts recorded by early explorers. So now with, let me go on. Now with only a few thousand native horses believed to be left in the Americas, native people are beginning to share the knowledge they have quietly protected for centuries. And I'm sure people are like, why didn't they say anything before? It's like, have you listened to anything ever that a Native American has said? No one listens to Native Americans. No one cares what they say. They're considered archaic, you know, savages. And their traditions are archaic savages because that is the opinion that was handed down by the people that conquered them, because it gave them an excuse to do so. And this article largely says the same thing, that horses in Spain were seen as a sign of nobility and sophistication. And in order for them to conquer the Native Americans the way that they did, they would have to consider them not capable of having such intense relationships with horses. Otherwise, they would have to concede that these are a sophisticated people of nobility even. and they weren't about to do that. So this person wrote their thesis, their PhD thesis, on how they suppressed this knowledge and downplayed all the things that were written about. There were several people who made who wrote that they saw all these horses. So let me go to that part. Horses and the native people of North America are not just spiritually intertwined. Their histories echo each other. After the conquistadors arrived, both were slaughtered, forced into subservience, and pushed onto inferior lands. Both have survived. Side by side, they are with us, and they've experienced everything we've been through, Running Horse Collins says. The memory of those injustices still live on in the stories of Native people. So they have stories that they hand down to people, and there's never a story about the horses dying out because they didn't die out. And in fact, they had they were closer than we are to our dogs, I believe. No, it's impossible. Come on, man. But probably just as close. You know, they probably had that intimate of a relationship. Yeah, that was overstepping my bounds there, let me tell you. Early explorers, all the dog owners out there, I'm like, what? Yeah, no. Take it back. Okay, early explorers and settlers chronicled the presence of horses throughout North America. In 1521, this is well before... Oh, no, it isn't. Still 16th century. In 1521, herds were seen grazing the lands that would become Georgia and the Carolinas. They bring horses in 1600s, and suddenly they're all over the Georgians and Carolinas. 60 years later, Sir Francis Drake found herds of horses living among native people in coastal areas of California and Oregon. From one coast to the other, you know, they land in Mexico and boom, the whole continent is covered in horses. In 1598, Don Juan de Onate, something like that, described New Mexico as being full of mares. Yet the official story that was written into the history books and which persists today, because, you know, even though these people have a sanctuary for horses and, you know, she's written a thesis about it, ultimately, who cares, you know? People have their story, you know, history is the story of the conqueror, of the victor. Edward somebody said that, Gibbons or something like that said that. Yeah, that's the story. That's the story we get. Whoever wins gets to tell the story. You don't hear the story from the ones that were defeated and conquered. And so, no, why would you hear that anything else other than that horses died out? Yet the official story that was written to the history books and which persists today is that the New World had no horses before the arrival of Spanish. According to the narrative, the first horses to arrive in the New World in 1519 were progenitors of every horse found in the continent later years. That it would have been biologically impossible for a small group of horses in Mexico to populate regions thousands of miles away in as little as 2 years is never discussed. You know, when the emperor wears his new clothes, you know how many people are willing to say nothing and just go, okay, you know? And even if something doesn't make any sense at all, people are just willing to like, oh, okay, so of course this came over in the 16th century. Okay, you know. Therefore, anybody that says anything different, even if they have the horses right in front of you, the horses that went extinct, you know, supposedly, even though they're right in front of you, you'll say it's a trick because we are so beaten down to believe anything that we see in print and anything that comes from someone that says they're smarter than you. It is just ridiculous, but it is by design that they're saying in this article that they would have been wicked to conquer a civilized people. They had to paint the natives as wicked and unfortunately and evil and backward and savages. And that allowed them to rape and pillage the land and the people. Oh, so it's so upsetting. But the thing and so many people have like said they've walked away from the Book of Mormon over the horses. And the horses are the biggest lie of our history books, that they went extinct. They didn't go extinct. And no, the Europeans did not populate the entire Americas with horses that they brought over in the 1600s. No, it's just not true. So, and like I said, those horses that they have on their sanctuaries wouldn't even be there if they had gone extinct. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, isn't extinct mean when there's no more left? I mean, last I checked, that's beyond rare, But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because a lot of people have had a major meltdown over the animals, and I don't know why that. I have more. There's some, doctrinal things in there where I'm just kind of like, let me, but the horses, you're worried about animals and science and what they haven't discovered and what the conquistadors, it's like, please. That's like who cares? There were all sorts of animals that they saw. They were four-legged and big. They looked like they'd be good on the grill or that they could pull my cart. That's that's what they knew. And I just want to remind you that you are such an incredible child of God. And I am just glad to be able to share this with you. And I've had fun when I'm able to sit down and do a little research and do some reading and find topics. This is really fun for me to learn new things. And I love how it relates so much to the Native people. And then I'm able to share a little bit of that with you and how valid they are to listen to and how valid they are in their history. And I just want to encourage you to worship in a place where you feel loved, where it's just obvious. And I will talk to you again soon.